Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Sunday, February 21st, 2021, the 9th of Adar, 5781. Hope you are doing well in your part of the world. We are recording this week's show here on a Sunday. This is actually my Monday show. And the first part of this program is also live on Facebook right now. We're going to go to our very, very special, important guest right now. Binyamin Horgen is our guest this morning. He is the husband of, good morning, a husband of Esther Horgen, Hashem Yikom Dama, may God avenge her blood, who was murdered in a terror attack on December 20th, just 2 months ago. She went for a jog outside of her community of Tel Menashe in northern Samaria, and she was murdered by an Arab terrorist, leaving behind 6 children. The terrorist was arrested, was apprehended as a result. I want to thank you so much, Binyamin, for the strength and the courage to speak to us here this morning.
Thank you for having me on.
You wasted no time in sharing the story of your wife, of Esther's legacy to the world. I wanted to know if you could please tell my audience a little bit about your wife, those who may not have known her or may not have heard the story of her life. You've done a lot, and I've learned a lot since we originally spoke a few weeks ago. And since then, I've learned about your wife's amazing legacy and the things she did and the people she touched. Unfortunately, her life was cut short. But if you can, just talk about her a little bit for the audience who may not have heard about her.
Yeah. So Esther was born in France, as I was, and when she was quite young, around age 10, 12, she decided that she would live in Israel. She came here to visit with her parents, and she decided that this was a place for her. And when she grew up at the age of 18, she just decided to make Aliyah, left her home, left her parents, left her friends, and came by herself to Israel. She first acclimated in Jerusalem and studied arts in the Michlelet Emunah. And 2 years later, when she was 21 and I was 2, we actually met. I came to Israel when I was a bit younger, and I was at the time in the active duty in the IDF, in the Israeli Defense Force. And somehow we met, and we married, and we made our lives together. So we lived in several places, but for the last 20 years, we live here in this very nice community of Tel Menashe. And well, she did a lot of things during her life. So during the first years, she acted mainly in artist quality, and she made a lot of very fine Judaica art pieces. And I believe that we'll speak about it a bit later on. But later in our life, she became interested in therapy and in Jewish psychology. And she studied that for a few years and became a therapist. And she helped a lot of people with gift of touching the soul and understanding the good in everyone. She had really what we call Ein Tova, a good eye. She saw the good in everyone, in every place, in every time, and she made it available to all. So it helped her a lot in her endeavor as a therapist, both for marriage counseling and for personal help. She loved nature. She loved to go out and connect with the nature, to run in the forest, to run in the nature, to walk everywhere. We visited a lot of places, obviously here in Israel, but also worldwide. And she took great care of herself also, because she was beautiful both inside and out. Health was an important part of her life. So sport and healthy eating and all these kind of things. She raised our 6 kids really wonderfully with extraordinary results. My eldest daughter is 29, my youngest son is 13, and the others spread in between. We also have 2 grandkids, and she was a wonderful grandmother. There are so much to say, but this is in a nutshell what you can summarize. Yeah.
Right. Well, you should know that all of Israel definitely shares in your loss and is giving you a big hug. I know a lot of people were extremely saddened, extremely moved and touched by hearing about your wife's legacy and all the things she accomplished in her short life, and the lives she touched and all of her work, whether it was through the counseling or her beautiful art, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So we all share in your pain.
Thank you.
And at the same time, I know that you have been thrust into a new world as a result. And we're talking about Israel advocacy. I know that you immediately have been active on different fronts in terms of trying to, God forbid, prevent the next terror attack, informing the world, particularly in your original home country of France and throughout the European Union, letting people know what we're dealing with here. And specifically, we're talking about the Palestinian Authority and their pay to slay program. The fact that those who carry out these atrocious, heinous crimes are incentivized and also are rewarded for this type of terror. So talk about your advocacy. I know you were not involved in this at all until
No.
now, but now you are very big on the scene in this field.
Well, until now, really, I like almost everyone in Israel, I was vaguely aware of this situation, but it didn't, until it touched my life directly, I wasn't really involved in it. And after this horrendous murder, we gathered all the family together, and we more or less decided that we would concentrate our efforts and our energy in positive ways, into doing goods, into doing things to a memory, such as the parks that we are building and the different books and artworks that we're editing. But I was, let's say, drawn to this subject because I just realized that actually this murder is not a single event. First of all, it's not a personal event. It's really an event of a national, let's say, reach. And I was made aware that this terrorist was incentivized by two things. First of all, the libels, the incitation, the Palestinian Authority is using all its power and all its public relations capabilities into drawing these people to do these kind of terror attacks almost directly. We have heard that during the inquiry, the investigation, that the terrorist said he made this in order to revenge a friend of his who died in Israeli prisons. But this guy, who was himself a murderer, actually, died of cancer. So he died of an illness in the Israeli prison, and he received full treatment, really extraordinary if you consider what would be the alternative if he would have stayed in the Palestinian Authority. So radiotherapy, chirurgical, everything. But he died, people die of cancer. Still, this terrorist decided to revenge his death, because this death was presented by the Palestinian Authority as some kind of murder by the Israeli prisons and by the Israeli Authority. They are just killing us, our guys in Israeli prisons, etc., etc. So he decided to revenge. The best way he found was to go and kill a woman in the forest, really, and in a horrendous and a very, very brutal way also. But the second part of it, so this is a priori, but a posteriori, after the fact, he actually is paid by the Palestinian Authority. He and his family are receiving a very fat salary, and it's a monthly pay which goes on for the rest of his life. And it goes and grows with the time. The more time he spends in Israeli prison, the higher the salary is. And because he already has spent for quite a few years in Israeli prison, so he's not starting at the bottom of the ladder. He's actually starting quite well with almost 5,000 shekels of salary, which is equivalent to, let's say, $1,250 a bit more, and which is almost twice as much as the Palestinian Authority pays teachers in schools. This is incredible. And this money is coming from the funds that the PA is receiving from donors. So European Union is the first one. France is a big donor to and a supporter of the PA in terms of finances. And this money actually comes from European taxpayers. So I couldn't leave it at that. And I decided to go and make it known to as many people as possible. So I have written and I open letters, and I have also contacted many other people who are dealing with this kind of information. I have a meeting planned for this week with the European Union ambassador in Israel. I'm also meeting the French ambassador. I'm in contact with French lawmakers. I was invited to the French Parliament to speak about it. And I intend to make as much noise as I can in order to make it known that to the European folks, to the French citizens, that their tax money is actually financing terror attacks in Israel against regular people, which happen to be also, by the way, for my wife anyway, a French and European citizen. And this is completely absurd. Yeah, so we must make as much noise as possible around that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this for years, the pay to slave program and all the nations who are donating towards this. And if you're listening to this broadcast, perhaps you live in an EU country, maybe you don't even realize that your governments are sending money, thinking, or at least on the surface, it appears that these are going towards humanitarian projects, and actually they're funding the salary of terrorists. So for those in the EU who are struggling now with the coronavirus and everything else, all the other issues that you have in your own personal countries, your governments, instead of investing money in your infrastructure and protecting and getting, I know the European Union is right now lagging behind in terms of coronavirus vaccinations and whatnot. Just know your funds are going, instead of going to those things, they're being diverted towards the Palestinian Authority under this guise of humanitarian need, when here's unfortunately, a horrible, epitomizing example of where your money is actually going. It's going to fund terrorism. I want to turn now. Go ahead, please.
I'd like to add, Josh, that actually I spoke with more than a few Palestinians who are themselves aware that actually these funds are not going to where they were intended. And the PA leadership is actually diverting the money to their own interest. And if you look at the priorities that they give to their budget, you will see that, first of all, they are paying the security forces, and then secondly, they are paying the medical teams. But the third line on the budget is actually the pay for slave program. And only after that comes the teachers and other workers of the PA. And at the end, you will find, for instance, money for coronavirus vaccines. They really don't care about that. They don't care about their own people. And there are many Palestinians who are now aware of that and are trying to make some noise about it. But it's slow, and so we must help them in doing some noise also on our side and on the European side, and demanding from the European government that they condition their help in canceling this cruel law, which is an official law of the Palestinian Authority for the pay for slave program.
And ironically, Israel then gets blamed for not providing coronavirus vaccines to the PA, but that's a whole different subject. I just wanted people to be aware of that. But I want to turn now back to your wife, Esther, Shemakom Dama. In her memory, you have acted with partners very quickly in order to produce a Megillah for Purim. This week we celebrate the holiday of Purim, Jews around the world. You'll have to give me the official name. I saw it listed as the Scroll of Esther. Esther, of course, Queen Esther, and now our Esther Horgen, a Purim Megillah featuring her artwork, which was put together extremely quickly, just in 3 weeks, from what I understand. If you can, talk about the Megillah, the book, which is now available, I believe, in bookstores and online. which was produced very quickly in memory of Esther, that people can use now for Purim coming up this Thursday night.
Yeah, so Rabbi Tuli Weiss, whom I met the first time during the Shiva, the 7 days of mourning, he actually was touched, like so many others, by the story of the terrorist attack against Esther, and he decided to activate immediately fundraising for the family through his organization, Israel 365, which is very active in the US. And he came to the Shiva to meet with me and also provide with this financial help for the family. And when we spoke about Esther and her work and everything, and he saw the artwork that she did, so he immediately decided, and we obviously supported it fully, to edit Megillah illustrated by our artwork. So and he made it really, I must say that this organization is extraordinary, and we immediately did whatever was needed in order to edit it. And thankfully, it was printed last week. I also asked and received from both Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Rivlin for letters of introduction for this. And they also responded very, very quickly and very kindly, and they wrote the introduction letters, which are printed in the book itself. So this is the book itself. So you can see it. It's actually a beautiful edition, and all illustrated by our artworks for each chapter in very, very nice ways. I invite all your listeners and viewers to go to the israelbible.com/Esther, and they can see it and also order it. So there is here, in addition to the scroll of Esther itself, which we are going to read this coming Friday for most of Israel and Sunday for Jerusalem, also forward. So as I mentioned, by President Rivlin, by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, I wrote an introduction about Esther, and also Rabbi Tuli Weiss wrote. And then there is also in the end some additions. So an additional article by Rabbi Tuli Weiss, and also an article that Esther herself wrote, because as I mentioned, she was not only an artist, and some of her very nice works can be seen in this Megillah. She was also a therapist, and she actually wrote quite a few articles. And we found one that she wrote in 2015 about how to react, how she reacted to a terror attack which occurred at the time, it was a terrible time in Israel with attacks almost daily. And she gave us a lot of hope and a lot of tools in order to cope with the current situation. And she said, yeah, love and really love of yourself and love of everyone around you is the answer to the hatred. So build instead of destruct, and look at everything in a good eye, and we will find a way to overcome the grief. And this article, wonderful article, is also translated. It was originally in French. It appears both in French and in English in the Megillah, and it's a very moving piece. So I invite all to go and look at this beautiful Megillah. It's also beautiful to the eye. It includes also a short commentary and transliteration of the main verses, translation into English. So it's a wonderful book, and that it was made in such a short time is absolutely extraordinary.
Amazing. Binyamin Horgen, I want you again to please let people know, number one, where they can get a copy of this Megillah leading up to Purim. And number two, if people want to contact you or get involved in your advocacy in terms of getting the truth out, taking the European Union to task for funding the pay-to-slay program, whether the people there know it or not, this is actually what's happening. So again, how can we get the Megillah? And how can people reach you to join you in your efforts in memory of your wife?
You can get the Megillah online from theisraelbible.com/Esther, or also you could go to Israel 365 website, and then you will find it quite easily. You can also contact me either on the Megillah or on other subjects through my Facebook page, Benjamin Horgen on Facebook. I believe it's quite easy to find. and I will make my best in order to answer every request and every proposal of support and of cooperation in to reach the goals that I'm trying to get. So these are the main ways. Also through Facebook, Israel 365 site, and for those who live in Jerusalem, the Pomeranz bookstore also holds this Megillah. You can just step in and buy one.
Right.
Actually, I would like to add one more thing. The
Please.
author of the Megillah of this Megillah printing is a non-profit action, and all the profits which are coming from these from the sale of these books will go to our second activity, which is to build a park in her memory in the forest where she was murdered. It's a beautiful place, and we will not let this cruel act defile it and make it a place of sorrow. It will remain a place of joy and a place of sports and a place of connection to nature and to yourselves. So we intend to make it in a nice park. We already have raised quite a significant funds, but we still need more in order to make everything we want to do. And one of the way is all the profits from the sale of the Megillah is going to the profit of this park. So this is important for you to know. When you buy one, you donate for two purposes.
Make sure out there, if you're watching or you're listening, get your copy of the Megillah. I want to thank you so much for your time, Binyamin Horgen. May you and your family be strong and know no future sorrow. Only good things for you, your children, your entire family, and hopefully we can speak again on happier occasions and only good things from here on out. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you forever.